Loud. Recording. Okay, here we go. Well, thank you for joining us. We are excited to be back for another edition of our NAECC Throwback Thursday chats. Today, we're happy to have Emilie Siverling, who is one of our Purdue alums. She will share her journey to Purdue and talk about all the wonderful things that she was able to do, not only on campus, but also working throughout Native communities. So let me formally introduce Emilie. She received her master's of Science in Curriculum and Instruction with an emphasis in science education in 2018, and she received her Ph.D. in engineering education in 2019. So with that, I'd like to again thank Dr. Siverling for joining us, and I will go ahead and have her start with our first question we ask all our participants is, if you wouldn't mind sharing your journey to Purdue and just kind of talk about how you got here and what kept you here.
Thanks, Felica. First, thank you for having me. So I grew up in northern Wisconsin. I grew up on a dairy farm. So always was working, with hands-on stuff. And I always really liked math and science. And so I ultimately decided to go to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I got a degree, my bachelor's degree in material science and engineering. And then for various reasons, I ended up not going right into an engineering job after undergrad. I did join Teach for America, and so I was placed out in South Dakota. So I am part of the 2009 Teach for America Corps, and I taught on the Rosebud Reservation. And the Teach for America stint was supposed to be 2 years, and I ended up liking it so much that I stayed for 4. So I taught. It was a high school chemistry and physics teacher at Todd County High School, which is in Mission, South Dakota, on the Rosebud Reservation. And learned a ton, probably the single most formative experience of my life. And I really enjoyed it. Maybe not the first year. The first year was, first year teaching was a lot, but that was awesome. And anyway, so during my time there, I realized how much I really grew to love education, but I also missed some engineering aspects. Like teaching chemistry and physics was kind of engineering, but I missed the full picture of engineering. And then I was at a student's graduation party, and his older brother was a PhD student in computer education at one of the universities in Colorado. I don't remember which one specifically. So, and I was talking to him, and I should probably drop Ian Hermany-Horses, who is an awesome person. And he basically was like, that engineering education is a thing that you can study. And I went, what? That's like these two things that I thought were separate are a thing together. And then I did some Google searching and found out that Purdue had a PhD in engineering education, and I applied and got in. And so, so I started the PhD in engineering education in 2013. And then along the way, it also made sense for me to apply for the Master's in Curriculum Instruction program in science education through the College of Education. And so I ended up, if you listen to the years of when I got my master's and PhD and were a little confused by them, it's because I did them in parallel instead of sequentially. So that's my story of how I got to Purdue and kind of a quick overview of.
Good. Well, yes, thank you for sharing that with us. And next, tell us about your favorite Purdue experience when you were here during your time from 2013 to 2019.
Awesome. So my advisor is a Purdue, or my PhD advisor, I should say, not my master's. My PhD advisor is a Purdue diehard. Like she has all 3 of her degrees from Purdue, bachelor's, master's, PhD, grew up in Indiana. And so she loves Purdue. Obviously she was my advisor. She's a faculty member at Purdue. She left to get tenure, but then came back. Anyway, so she was super into everything Purdue. And I was a little hesitant because I felt like my loyalties, especially athletically, were to Wisconsin. And I still am first and foremost a Wisconsin Badgers fan. But so she would work at getting me into some Purdue things. So I went to some, volleyball games, and those were great. I did get to ride on the Boilermaker special. That was great. But my favorite, so my advisor loves Purdue so much that she got like the special tickets. She and her husband had this, whatever the fancy tickets are for the football games, where they get to like stand by the end zone, and there's all like the nice seats. There's like tables and stuff, not up in the bleachers. Well, there was one weekend where Purdue was playing Wisconsin and she
Oh
and her
my.
out of town. And so she gave me and a friend the tickets.
Uh-huh.
And so in terms of, yeah, my like favorite Purdue event was I got to actually go, and I was wearing all my Wisconsin gear because I was that person. But I was in a fancy like Purdue section in the end zone with all the, you know, the people who were willing to pay extra money to be in that section. So that was a lot of fun to be there and watch that game.
Oh, good. Okay. And yeah, because we're still in football season, but we're kind of winding down. And I'm not sure if Purdue and Wisconsin have already played yet. I got to think about that. I know I should have brought that up because now I'm thinking now I'm going to have to check to see if they played and who won. But we're also, we've had our first couple of basketball games. So we're seeing that transition from football to basketball. So that's always unique. And I think when you first arrived, were we on the south side of campus at that point or not?
Yeah, yep. The little house.
Correct. Yes. So just for our viewers to know, if you're not aware, the Native American Culture Center, when we first opened our doors in 2006, we were located on the south side of campus, close to the vet school. So we were way down by the power plant, and students really had to be committed to come down and visit us. And we're still thankful that we would get students that would come, and Emily was one that would come and visit us for some snacks or to visit and just to kind of hang out or study. And you were able to come into our new place as well too, correct? Okay. Yeah. So during that time frame, we did move. We relocated to more the central part of campus. So now we're at the section of University and 5th Street. So we're right across from Earhart's. What is the engineering building? Armstrong is this way, and Lawson is right south of us, and Hovde administration is right there. So we really are in the central part of campus. And with that, you were able to see the growth and the change in that. If you want to just kind of mention it just a little bit to see how you were able to get the switch coming from our small place to our larger place.
Yeah, I call it the move. In my head, I don't know if anyone else does it. In my head, it's the little house to the bigger house. So yeah, I will say the advantage of the little house was parking and getting, like, from a car perspective, it was really nice. Not that, I mean, I often walked, but yeah, if there was like an evening event or something, it was a little easier. Whereas where you are now, there's all the one ways, so you have to like drive down the one way and then hit the other one way to hit the other one to get into. So, but from a walking perspective, yes, it's definitely a much better location.
And I don't think you've come back since then, because there's been a lot of growth that's taken place. Obviously, we have a couple of new buildings, but university is now two-way street, right in front of us. Before it was just a one.
That happened right the summer. I feel like that happened right when I was leaving.
Yeah, we still have one way, and we get to watch people that are illegally trying to make some turns and whatnot. So I won't call the illegal people out there, but regardless, we see them coming the opposite direction, like, you're going the wrong way, turn around. So that's, Deb and I are always watching from the window, like those nosy neighbors, like, what are they doing over there? They're going the wrong way. Okay, so. So back to our interview, just wanted to switch gears and see if you could talk to us about either what was your favorite class, your most challenging class, or I've even had some people who talked about their least favorite class and they describe why and how they overcame that. So kind of share whichever perspective you like on some of your classes here.
So I really enjoyed almost all of the classes I took. I think part of that maybe was being a grad student as well. And so I had a little bit, there's still, in any program, there's always some classes you have to take, but there's a little bit more flexibility with the graduate program. And so I didn't really have too many like, oh, I have to take this for whatever. So I'm gonna talk about my favorite class, and it probably also it was, I don't know that I would have thought of it as my favorite at the time, but in terms of has become one of the most useful classes I ever took. And it's a class that actually I think anyone can take. It's offered through engineering education. It's called Succeeding as an Engineering Professor, and has been taught in the past by Dr. Audine Fentiman. I don't know if I would assume she still teaches it. But it's basically, it was really good for me. A lot of not just engineering education, but engineering folks in general take it maybe a year before they're planning to leave. And we talk about, basically it's preparing to be an assistant professor. So if It's not so much if anyone is in grad school and planning to go into industry, I don't know that it would be a useful class, but if you're planning on going into academia, we did a lot of job prep stuff. So we worked on like our research statements and our teaching statements. We also just talked about the realities of balancing research and teaching and service. We talked about multicultural education and how, teaching for diversity within your classroom and trying to be inclusive. And so all of these things that are really, really, as a current faculty member, we'll get to that in a second where I am now, but I am an assistant professor. And so I'll like look back at those notes sometimes. And so that is kind of, it was probably my favorite class, and it's also really well taught. It's a discussion-based class. And so you get to hear from people, because people from all across engineering, and actually I think some non-engineering folks as well take it. You get to hear like everybody's perspective, like what's the job market in environmental science? Like what's the job market like in engineering education? What's the job market in mechanical engineering? And so you get to compare all those and I met a lot of cool people who I otherwise wouldn't have met.
There we go. Sorry, I had to mute myself. There was some loud traffic. I could hear them coming from way up there, so I hurried up and put myself on mute. But yeah, so that's really good. So thanks for sharing information. And as a graduate student that's been to Purdue, and I know you had that connection working out in South Dakota. So maybe you can talk about your connection to the center, or even to some of the other cultural centers across campus.
So I ultimately, before I left, ended up, I think, going to all of the cultural centers at one point, but I did purposely, when I first came to Purdue, I knew I wanted to I wanted to explore different cultural centers, but I especially, I kind of have a personal link to the Native American Education and Cultural Center because I had spent 4 years working with primarily Lakota students on the Rosebud Reservation. And it was, so I just wanted to, kind of keep up with those, with relationships and continuing to learn more about various indigenous cultures. And also kind of just also part of it, a little selfishly, was to just find a community outside of just my academic community. That'll come up in my advice later, is you need people in your life who are not just your major. And so I thought, well, let me explore the Native American Education and Cultural Center and see who's there. And so I did the trek. So I don't remember my first time at the center. Sometime in the fall of 2013, I did look it up, and I walked down to South Campus by the vet building. At that time, it was probably like a good 20 minute walk, and hung out. And I just kept hanging. I guess I just kept coming back and kept hanging out. No one kicked me out, and I really enjoyed as Flick has kind of hinted at, I was a big one for food in particular, which I feel like all graduate students are like, but I think I made a particular lasting impression because a lot of people say, oh yeah, you're the food person. So basically anytime there was free food, especially love finals week pancake breakfast, I was there. Lots of whatever, not every guest speaker I was able to attend, but I tried to attend as many NAECC events as possible. White elephant Christmas celebrations, always awesome. I still have a mug from one of those that I use on like a weekly basis. It's a climate change mug where when it gets hot, the like water levels rise. Yeah. So
and you had the salt and pepper shaker too. Those.
Yes. Kyle, did Kyle get that? Anyway, yeah, the salt and pepper shakers with the buckhorns. I still have, well, when I say I still have those, my family shares like a hunting camp with several other families, and I donated them to the hunting camp, and so they are still there.
Good. Okay, they continue to live on, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those like you never know when to 9 out of 10 people this is a joke gift, but for the 10 out of 10th person, it's like, oh, actually, I can find use.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of kept coming back to the cultural center. Everyone was and I assume still is really awesome and cool to hang around with and just chat. And I think I to be honest, for me personally, I hung out a little bit more after the move just because of proximity reasons as well. So my attendance definitely increased, partially just because it was a 5-minute walk instead of a 20-minute walk. but yeah, so it was always great to meet new people and to really, yeah, be part of a community that wasn't just my like major people.
Mhm. Good. Okay. And we always enjoyed having you at the center. And when you were talking about the first time you met, I know that we would often do the centers, we would often do outreach events at, there was a graduate student outreach event. So I think that's where we met you for the first time. And then we invited you to come down. So I'm pretty certain that's where we had our first encounter with you. And then we just, and our relationship continued after that. So thank you for coming and visiting us and staying with us.
Well, thank you for remembering. I'm glad you remember, because as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I did meet you at a booth, and then you invited. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good.
Good. Well, now that you talk about your whole Purdue experience and your connection to the center, so now share with us what you're doing post Purdue and how you're using your Purdue degree in your current position.
So I am currently an assistant professor in the Department of Integrated Engineering at Minnesota State University, Mankato. Mm-hmm. However, I should clarify that I am actually in northern Minnesota. So I am on one of Mankato's like satellite campuses area. So I am up in Virginia, Minnesota, which is about an hour north of Duluth. It is currently snowing outside. You can't see, but we've had snow all day. So it's our first big snow of the winter for us. And so I am in, as the name suggests, I'm in integrated engineering. So all of our students, we kind of teach a little bit of everything. So they have classes in I would say the classical technical courses. And then also they have design and professionalism. So they have credits that they have to take in design and professionalism. And then so they're integrated in that way. And then they're also integrated in the sense that their knowledge base. So all of our students take some kind of mechanical engineering-esque courses, some electrical engineering courses, some general engineering. So like entrepreneurship, statistics, that kind of stuff. And then they can focus in a discipline if they want to. But our goal is really to create, like, our degree is people talk about well-rounded, and that's, we do a lot of those. So that means I get to teach a little bit of everything. I teach some professionalism workshops. I teach some design workshops, which builds on, my last year at Purdue, I was able to be an instructor in the first year engineering program. So I actually, with permission from those people, use some of that stuff to teach my current students.
Okay, good.
I did ask, I was like, hey, this PowerPoint is really great. Can I steal some slides from it? And they're like, yeah, just give us credit. And then I also teach my technical courses. So I teach the material science focus courses because that's my background. So like material science, mechanics of materials, material selection and design, that stuff. So I should also say I am at a primarily undergraduate institution, a PUI. So I do some research, but primarily my job is focused on teaching and supporting students. And so, which is really one of the takeaways that I learned from Purdue, being in Purdue, is that I did not want to be a researcher all the time. So I started the PhD program. I mean, generally speaking, people who start PhD programs, like, it is a research degree. That is it doesn't matter what your focus is, it's a research degree. And that's what it prepares you to do, is to be a researcher, either in industry or in R1. And throughout my experiences at Purdue, both in terms of my research experiences, my dissertation, I also had some teaching experiences. I learned that although I do appreciate research and I can do it, like I am capable of doing it, I was able to learn that I really enjoy the interaction with students. Like, that's really where my passion lies. And doing some research on the things I'm doing to support students is something I like to do, but I learned by doing that I didn't want to do just research. And so when I was doing the job search in the fall 2018, I did apply to some R1 positions just to have some other things going, but I also looked into smaller universities and like PUIs and stuff. And so Purdue prepared me really well from both like a learning by doing aspect, and then also because my degrees are in science education for my master's and engineering education for my PhD. So I learned about how to do research in those areas. So I can not only teach my students, but the research I do actually do is research about how to better improve education, which kind of, so it's like this cyclic loop about, feeding into my passions for teaching. It works out really well. And so Purdue has one of the largest and arguably best engineering education programs in the country. They were definitely the first. That is the first engineering education program. And so that prepared me really well. And many of the experiences that I was able to do at Purdue prepared me really well for my current job as a faculty member.
And I know this question is not on our list, but is there any type of course out there that you felt would have been beneficial, or some type of training you would have to prepare you for your position? Because I know you talked about having a well-rounded Purdue degree with covering it both in your master's in curriculum and education and in your engineering education. So I was just curious, that just kind of came to mind when you were talking.
Well, I feel like I don't know that I have to talk about a course that I wish existed, because I was the kind of person where my advisor had to actually force me to stop taking classes and focus on my dissertation, because I kept finding things that interest me. So I already mentioned the Succeeding as an Engineering Professor really helped me prepare for my position. Another class at Engineering Education, the School of Engineering Education teaches that I think anyone can take. It's called Content Assessment and Pedagogy. And so that's basically, it's a curriculum design course, but from like an engineering lens. And so that's one that again, as someone who teaches classes, I had some curriculum design in the past because I was, a science teacher, a high school science teacher. So I had done curriculum design courses, but it was another one. So that was there. There's also a general, I don't know if it still exists. There was a class called Grad 590, and it's any grad student or postdoc on Purdue can take it. What is it called? But it's similar in the sense of it's like preparing to be an assistant, like a faculty member. So talking about writing grants, and like a lot of we had guest speakers that were like the deans and the provosts and all those people come in and talk about preparing. So in terms of preparing to do the job that I'm currently doing, I just kind of kept taking classes to feel more and more prepared. And then my advisor finally was like, no, you need to focus on your dissertation. Stop taking classes.
Yeah, I could see that happening. Okay, great. So we're kind of winding down. We have our last question, and we've asked this of all our interviewees and alums that have come in and shared their pathway with us. But if you could share some advice or some words of wisdom that we can pass along to our current students, or maybe students who are considering coming to Purdue.
So I kind of already hinted at this earlier, and I said it, but my advice, and the thing that really helped me succeed, and I was going to use the word thrive. I'm like, I don't know if thrive is right, but make it through. I made it through my graduate education, was by finding my people, I guess. And my people was not one group for me. So I did have my group of people that were also graduate students in engineering education. And in fact, my closest friends in engineering education, we still meet on Skype or Zoom. I shouldn't say that. We started on Skype every other week to this day. We're all professors in engineering and computer science across the country. I think the one who graduated earliest is going up for tenure this year. So we're all
okay.
Some of us are at R1, some are at PUIs. One person is a lecturer, not an assist, like not a tenure track, but we all kind of have this peer mentoring group, and we just have a standing meeting every other week where we join, and it's part, complaining to each other, like we just need to vent, and it's part also like peer mentoring, and obviously there's also a group text and all of that stuff. So I do have my group of my people of, we all have the same, we're all engineering education folks doing faculty in engineering things in this. So there's that group. But I also, I was involved in the, NAECC. So that's another one of my kind of communities that I could go to and just hang out with people and just talk and learn and just enjoy myself. And I didn't have to, there's no pressure to be like, I have to do all these high achievements. It's like, no, I just hang out and be myself. I was also part of the Graduate Women in Engineering Network, GWEN, So that's, I don't know if that's, I assume that still probably exists. And so that was some more like women in engineering. I was part of that group as well. And so between those three groups of people, I kind of, I found my people, and I found people that could support me in different things. And so my recommendation would be to find your people. There's so many. Purdue has, I don't know, 40,000 students. I think that's an underestimate. Something like, when I was 40,000, but I've heard that it's gone like way up.
It has gone a little bit over 40,000, but I don't know the exact number. So, but we'll just say over 40,000 right now. Yeah.
So over 40,000, obviously that's undergrad and graduate students, and you don't have to meet everyone. Don't need to meet everyone, but there's definitely there's plenty of people there. There's so many awesome resources at Purdue. Mental health resources, physical health resources. I did yoga a lot. Just like extracurricular activity resources. There's so many things to get involved in. And so it's just really, studies are important, and it's important that, if you're in grad school, keep working at your dissertation or whatever it is. If you're an undergrad, keep chipping away at your classes. But finding those things, finding those groups of people in your major or degree program, but also outside of it to have different groups of people that meet different, I guess, needs, was really useful for me.
And I know this is not a question that I had listed here, but I'm just curious if you still have your cat with you.
Yeah, my three-legged cat Yoda was, I purposely bought an extra large desk so that I could, because I knew that she would be on it all the time. And so she has her own box. Oh, you can't see it because anyway, she has her own box on the end of it. And she was there all day. And then I started talking and she hopped up and left. And I have no idea where she is.
Camera shy.
Yep. Yoda is doing great. She's 10 this year, which is, about middle-age-ish for a cat.
Yeah, exactly.
She, with a lot of the online teaching and stuff, my students have also gotten to know Yoda because sometimes she will just lay in front of the computer and I'm like, use this. I appreciate it. But so yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, I was, as you're talking, I remember that we would have discussions about cats because, I still have 4 useless cats that don't belong to me and they're still at my home. But we would often have some good conversations about your 3-legged cat and all the funny feline adventures they would all participate in, right? I mean, they're everywhere. Great. Well, I think that wraps up our whole discussion here, and I really do appreciate Emilie joining us. We had some challenges just trying to get to this point with technology, but we got here, and I'm glad that we'll be able to share this message with the rest of our Purdue community, and also, throughout our social media community as well. Just want to make sure people get a chance to hear what's going on. And our whole point with these Throwback Thursdays is just to reconnect with faculty, alums, to see how they're thriving out there, as you're saying, thriving, surviving, but really just kind of help see how you were able to use the center and how it benefited you. And we just, like catching up with people and seeing how all the wonderful things that you're doing there. So thank you for joining us. And that's going to be it. So for everybody out there, thank you for joining us. Again, my name is Felika Hostin-Bryant, Director of the Native American Cultural Center. We have another couple more interviews coming up before the semester ends, and we'll be sharing those and visiting with students and alumni that are now out in the world. So take care. Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and officially stop here.
Thank you.